to share some, we're recording, to share with you some insight into new construction and the inspection experience. And Rael and I have worked on this class together, and what we came up with is, I used to market it a little bit different, 2 truths and a lie, just like the game, but it's easier just to talk about them as lies, because they're things that people believe about new construction that is not true. And so Rael's going to give you some examples of how it's not true. My understanding of this whole, so first of all, we're doing a ton of new construction, and I think there are a couple of market influences that are affecting that. Number one, there's like hardly any inventory of resale, right? So it's a great time to buy new construction because you can actually get it. And with such a good economy, it's become a huge part of our business. There are some weeks where 20% of the inspections we do are new construction. So Rael's going to go through the phases of new construction inspection, and then we're going to focus on the performance inspection, the one that's done right before the walkthrough. And then we have other webinars this month that will teach you about the other phases. My understanding of what a job of a real estate agent is to help buyers understand this process. As what you're really doing is you're showing yourself as an expert in the market and helping them to establish themselves and the market value of the house that they're buying. And new construction has those issues as well. And you as a real estate agent know that new construction homes are not perfect, but it's hard to convince a buyer sometimes. And so what I'm hoping will happen as a result of this class is you will be able to more easily talk to your buyers about new construction and the reason a private inspection may be in their best interest, and let them make their own decisions, and then they will get to love their decisions. And they'll get to love you. Win-win, all right? So the way this class will work is Rael's gonna give his presentation. If you have questions, put them in the Q&A or put them in the Q&A, and we will get to all of those at the end, so that those who are here just to hear Rael will get to hear him. If you want to stay after for questions, he will be able to answer all of those questions then. Without further ado, give it up for Rael Levin.
Hi. Okay, I'm hoping that we get a picture. No, for some reason, I'm not getting a picture here.
Are you sharing screen?
Yeah, I'm going to share.
Hold on. See if that fixed it.
Okay. All right. I think I was a lot better at doing inspections than I am about doing all of this stuff via Zoom. But here we go. So a little bit about the background. I had been in real estate since the 1970s, and an opportunity came up to work with Home Probe as an inspector for several years, almost 3,000 inspections in the time that I was with the company. So a lot of new construction, a lot of resale, and this is going to be our look at the new construction inspections. So the 3 lies and truths clients think about new construction inspections. So the first thing that folks seem to believe is that the city or the county inspectors will actually check the whole process from start to finish, and so it all should be good to go. But it's done in a piecemeal way. All right, so there are different phases to the actual inspection process on new construction. First of all, they have to dig the foundation. So everything, of course, the plans are submitted, the county goes out, they lay it off, they dig it, and now the foundation is ready to be inspected. So they have the inspector come out and see the actual foundation, how it's been dug. Maybe they've put in some rebar for extra support. How wide is it? How deep is it to meet their code? And then when that's poured, the framing of the structure is done, and the inspector would come back and inspect the structure. So if it was actually on a poured concrete foundation, then they would look at everything from the floor joists to the actual foundation itself, the solid structure. Most of that's being done now with poured concrete. A very small percentage is still being done on masonry or cinder block. And then they would inspect the floor, rafters or joists, and then they would look at the actual dividing partitions, the studs, and as well as the outside structure, the ceiling joists, and then the roof framing. And then another inspector would come back once the mechanicals were installed, so the HVAC, the plumbing, and the electrical. So what actually happens here is that from our point of view, from the private inspector, really the foundation is not an issue that we can go in unless we're actually present when it's being poured, that we can give an opinion on whether it was done right or not. So basically the best for us would be to come in to see the framing structure and the mechanical. And of course, at the point where all of the framing and all of the mechanical has been installed, that would be the time for us to come in and have a look at it. So again, city county inspections do not guarantee that there will not be any structural defects in the building process. And so they're not liable for any defects that may present themselves over time. It might look good right now when we come out today, but what will happen 6 months, a year, or 5 years from now? So that's why we want to have somebody who can spend a decent amount of time on the actual site to look at these items very carefully. And what happens is, after, if there's a defect that's found, then it's up to the client and the builder to sort it out. Now, who's going to get in the middle of all of that is probably you, the agent. Okay. And we want to avoid that if we can, surely, right? So what we do know is that the city inspectors have to do between about 25 to 30 inspections each working day. And so how much time, if you figure out that they're actually going to that many locations, travel time in between, and then how much time can they actually be on site to inspect the actual home itself. So I'd just like to share kind of a little personal example of what happened to me on a new construction inspection. So there was a gentleman who was actually a retired professor from Emory, and so smart guy. And he arrived on that hot August day to join me for the home inspection, and he wasn't happy. He was shaking his head and he said, I really don't understand why my agent has recommended that I do a home inspection with Home Probe when I've got the county already inspected everything, and all we're waiting for now is the certificate of occupancy. And he says, I'm spending $300+ for this townhouse, and I'm not happy about it. And to be honest with you, it was so hot and I was tired already before I got started. And I said, look, I'll be happy to cancel this inspection, no cost to you, but I'm only going to do so if we get your agent on the phone and I can hear her say, okay, just forget about it. Well, he called the agent, basically said, I don't really want to get this done. And she was absolutely adamant that we do the inspection. She says, no, you need to do this inspection. So I said to him, look, follow me around and see what I do, see what I look at, and how I test everything. Well, in an average home, there are approximately 300+ items to look at. If there's a vacant property, and say we are going to inspect the electrical outlets, the standards of ASHI, which is what we do our inspections by, require you in a room of 4 electrical outlets to inspect one of the 4 to meet their standards. Windows, if there are 3 or 4 windows, if you test one of them, then that's acceptable too. At Home Probe, we test everything that we can get to. So if there are 4 outlets, we're testing 4 outlets. If there are 3 windows, we're testing 3 windows. If there are 2 cold air returns and 2 supply vents for our HVAC, we're testing them all. You know why, right? Because for sure, the folks move in and the 1 or 2 outlets that were not tested are the ones that are not working. So we go ahead and we do them all. the result was that this gentleman followed me around on the first floor where the kitchen was, and he saw me run everything, the dishwasher, the hot and cold water, the vent hood, the disposal, checked for the GFIs. I'm going through my inspection process. Well, you know, the first floor took approximately 45 minutes. And by the time I went up to the floor above, which was the first level for the bedrooms and for the living room, he already decided he'd had enough. So he sat down with his cell phone on the step as I went up to the second and then to the third floor. So I was about 2.5 hours into this inspection, which included getting into the attic space as well. And I came back down, and he looked at me and he said, I had no idea that it was that involved. I had no idea that it was this thorough. And I said, well, that's the way we do them. And so he thanked me and he left. And I finished up on my computer, entering pertinent information. And I went into my vehicle out in the parking lot to finish up the report, because we always send our reports out in the evening of the inspection. So as soon as possible, we are aware that the due diligence now is so short, we need to get that inspection to you as quickly and to your client as quickly as we can. Well, while I was sitting there, the city inspector showed up in his truck and he pulled up in front of the unit. And I was going to get out of my car to go and speak with him and just to introduce myself. But I couldn't do it quick enough because he didn't stay there long enough for me to get out of my car. Now, look, you know, I can move, but he was gone 15, 20 seconds after he pulled up. He never got out of his car. He never went into the unit. And the next day they got that certificate of occupancy. What does the certificate of occupancy mean? It means that somebody went in and checked that the items that were connected, so like everything to gas, perhaps our range, our furnace, our hot water heater tank, if any of these items were gas fired, that they were actually working and connected properly. Was there anything open, just open gas line standing around? None of those things were checked. So it was a good thing that we actually had gone in there. There happened to be one small item, which is pretty common on new construction. When the HVAC systems were being installed, the air conditioner unit that goes on the outside of the home had not been fully charged with refrigerant. And that's very common. Air conditioner units are not sent out from the factory fully charged. They're actually only charged when they're on site. And so this one hadn't been done, and it was a minor fix. So they were able to tell the seller, we need to get the HVAC people out here and hook it up and connect it properly and give us the refrigerant that we need, and which they did, and everything moved on just fine. But that was just an example, and there's so many. We'll cover some more of those a little later in this presentation. So there's line number 2 is when you think about, you know, okay, it's not really a lie, it's a truth somewhat, where, hey, you know, you're going to be covered for at least a year after closing by the builder's warranty. And that's all that I'm going to need. That's pretty much what the buyer is thinking. But what about structural defects that don't show up in that first year, right? So I did an inspection on a $2 million house out in Sandy Springs, and I was doing it in the basement area. And I noticed that a floor truss, just like you see in the picture here, was resting on the foundation on the left side of the home, but on the right side of the home, right below the fireplace, it was not resting on anything. It was nailed to the floor joist, but there was no support at the bottom side of this truss. So what would happen then is, over time, the truss would start to sag, and above it, the fireplace weight would push down on it. And so that would cause the fireplace brickwork or facing to crack and to break, maybe even disconnect the chimney interior, the metal piping on the inside. You know, all kinds of structural issues would result from that truss not being supported where that fireplace was. So what you can see here is how when something does settle, you're going to have that settling taking place. And you can see here it's settled a couple of inches already. What will also happen is there will be cracks in the drywall here. And also the doors won't open and close properly because there'll be binding on the frame that has now gotten out of level. So lots of items are taking place that are being starting to malfunction due to the structure not having been seen and reported on by the county inspector. So here's a look at it. In the plans of the actual foundation, they put in a vent into the foundation itself, and that happened to be where the actual beam that was holding up the floor system was supposed to rest on the concrete foundation itself, and it didn't. So now we have one piece of 2x4 that's holding up the whole floor on the other side of the foundation, which is too much stress on. You can see there's actually a crack starting to form here already in this piece of 2x4. And the house had just passed the municipal code inspection. So this is a situation that was really useful for the client to know about, and they could correct it by installing another piece of concrete block right here to support the system the way it should have been. All right, another little item here, like after a final inspection, closing, and then the clients move in and they go in and there's no power in the master bathroom. Okay, well, that's because the inspector didn't go through and test everything out the way I explained to you, previously, where we go in and test every electrical outlet, every switch, every light, etc. And certainly with this unit right here. So there was no power in the master bathroom. We went and checked to see, what it was. How do you do that? Again, you're gonna have to call in an electrician perhaps to come in and see about why there's no power in the master bathroom or anywhere else for that matter if it's not working. By the way, just to give you a heads up, if we actually come out to a unit, everything's supposed to be good to go, the utilities are all supposed to be on, etc. We will handle that, and I'll show you how in just a moment. So when we think about new construction, we think about, okay, it's brand new, so there shouldn't be any defects. And so that's the way we look at it. Well, do you know anybody who's ever bought a car that turned out to be a bit of a lemon? And then you have to take it back. Well, you can't kind of pick up the house and take it to where you want it to. So you want to get these issues resolved in the home before you actually do go to closing and to and to get it remedied beforehand. Okay, so priorities do change after closing, right? So when the builders and the subcontractors have been paid, how much motivation really is there for the client to be at the top of the list to take care of items that need to be repaired? So, the tendency really, especially in a big subdivision, is to get the other houses sold and to kind of put your resources to enable those other units to be sold. And so that's where they want to go in order to put their resources there, rather than taking care of complaints or issues on a house that's already been closed. So let's have a look at some of these new construction issues that we've found over the years. And so here we're looking at a limitation where the gas is turned off. So it also affects the gas water heater inspection and perhaps a gas range. That might be it. So in the limitations inspection report, part of the inspection report, they're actually broken out into 3 sections. And the sections are the action level, which is recommendations. And then we have the beginning of it, where we're actually identifying all of the components that are there. So this one is listed, and really it's important for both you and your agent to really look at the whole complete inspection report. People tend to scan through it and then they don't see some of these items that are really important. And one of them is not just looking at recommendations, but looking at the limitations, because there are limitations that do happen on new construction specifically. So in this particular case, the gas was turned off at the time of the inspection. Now, even if the meter is there, we cannot go and turn on the meter to get the gas working. There has to be done by the gas company. We don't know if there's an open gas leak somewhere. We don't know if there's a nail being driven into a pipe somewhere and there's a leak. It even could be in the wall. And by us turning it on, we are placing the owners or the buyers in jeopardy. So we cannot go and turn that gas on just in order to facilitate that inspection. But we will always come back at no charge one time to the property for a revisit and to complete those items that were not done. So we will do the rest of the inspection process, but come back to the home to complete it once the limitation has been removed. So here we see Junior kind of shaking and freezing a little bit because the gas was off and there was no heat. When we deal with cooling and heat pumps, in this particular picture, you see that we had done a condo inspection where the actual units are on the roof, and this one was missing. So when I was testing the HVAC system in the cooling mode, I was getting no cooling at all. Went up onto the roof where the units were, and of course this one was missing. So we realized somebody had either taken it away and stolen it, or it was removed with the intent of replacement, but it had not been done by the time the inspection was done. There's also the issue and limitation that, so that would have been a recommendation issue actually, to have it installed. And this would have been the limitation where in the case of the temperature in the wintertime being below 50 degrees. So the refrigerant is actually a gas. And then as it gets colder and colder, that liquid, it actually becomes somewhat liquid. And by trying to get that compressor to force the air through into the system, it has to work so much harder. So you kind of imagine, using the analogy of water, if you have just regular water running through the faucet, it'll run freely. But if you have some kind of gunk in there, then it would be sluggish, and then it would have to work that much harder to get through. And that's what happens with the electrical system, with the refrigerant trying to be pushed through. When it becomes sluggish, that motor has to work that much harder to move it into the interior unit and into the system, and you can burn out the motor on the compressor outside. So there are some methods that the HVAC technicians can use, and they have specialized equipment that they can actually test and make sure that the unit is operative. But again, we would come back free on a day that the temperature was above 50 degrees, and then we would be sure that we would not be damaging the equipment by running it when it was below 50 degrees. Okay, so here's the way it would be written up. Air conditioning compressor condition, inadequate cooling. The breaker of the upstairs, in this case it was electrical, the upstairs air conditioning unit is off. It was not off before the unit was tested. The breaker tripped during normal operation, no cooling on the top floor. And then we would say, as soon as possible, have a qualified HVAC technician should evaluate. And again, here it could be just a matter of the original installation was done incorrectly, causing that trip. It could also be that the breaker that was installed on that unit was too small. So there are a variety of reasons why it wouldn't work. So we want a specialist to come in and take care of that. Okay, same thing on plumbing. The water service wasn't on. Now we know when you checked with the folks on the seller side yesterday, it was on. And here we go out today and it's not on. Perhaps overnight somebody came there and turned it off. Maybe the water bill hadn't been paid and this was the day that they were there. So we couldn't do the testing of the faucets, hot or cold for that matter, and we couldn't have check any of the drainage systems. So we couldn't see if there was any kind of problem with water leaks because the water wasn't on. So again, come back to the property for a revisit at no charge. So it's really important to confirm that that all the utilities are on at the time that we do the inspection. So here we look at it again, a limitation where the gas range couldn't be tested because the range, the gas was off. And then electrical, the dishwasher and waste disposal couldn't be checked because the breaker was off. And then, perhaps the gas meter is not installed. So if we're looking at the property and this little jewel right here is not connected and not turned on, then we know we got an issue. So you can see in this particular case that the actual lines are open and that the gas is traveling through the meter into the unit. Sometimes when we do the inspection, they have floor coverings in there. We'd like to see the floor before after we've actually removed all that paper. We all carry shoe covers, so we're not going to damage the floor when we walk through here. So that again is something that would be mentioned in the limitations. Once the floor covering is removed, then we can you can have a closer look at it with your client, and if there were any issues there, then you could point them out as a minor defect that may need some perhaps touching up with the stain or some little paint work that might be done around the edges. When we're in the attic, it's amazing. Even on brand new construction, you can see here where the furnace vent has actually become disconnected in the attic. And you can just look, this is all brand new equipment up there. We are going into the attics wherever we can. It's a really important place to see both of the structure and for any mechanicals that might be up in there, as well as insulation installation. Another very common thing on new construction condominiums, no drain provided for the washing machine drip pan. So we would normally have a drip pan underneath the washing machine right here, and we would have a method of, if something happened to the water heater and it started to leak, there would be that drip pan and a drain line to take the water away before causing damage in the actual washroom, and likely to any kind of drywall on the floors below. Many times our washing machine area would be located where the bedrooms are on the second or third floor of a multi-level townhouse or condominium. Water intrusion, yes, we are in the crawl spaces, we are in basements. Water intrusion is a big issue. So when we're in there, this is under the area of recommendation to be repaired. Water on the floor, in the crawl space in the rear. Task is to consult with the foundation or waterproofing company as soon as possible, and the cost would be depends on the preferred method of repair. Sometimes it's so simple, it's just a matter of extending downspouts away from the foundation on the exterior by 6 to 8 feet. Takes care of that sort of thing. But we can even see the efflorescence on the wall, the dampness on the wall, so that moisture is coming right through the wall here. Okay, when even something simple like when we have new construction, we have a dirty filter. Reason that happens is because when the drywall is being sanded and finished, a lot of that is being done. The HVAC system is running, and the cold air return is pulling in the dust from the drywall, as well as all the construction debris, and it's actually filling up the ducts and the filters as the building is being completed. So it all kind of gunks itself up there in the furnace filter. So we would pull that filter. Looking at it, you can see how white it is here from all of that drywall dust buildup. We also always included a size of the filter in the actual report, so folks know how to do that. This is a really inexpensive filter. We do recommend a pleated fabric filter, which gets changed every 90 days. So that would be a recommendation. But here, I think the recommendation would be to clean the ductwork and to clean the filter and replace it. Okay, just a quick look into the electrical service. We're looking at the grounding, different types of grounding rods, perhaps to metal to copper if there's copper water supply. And the most common these days is a UFER, which is a UFER, a metal that's actually driven into the foundation at the time that it's being poured and then connected to the home for us to do a proper grounding of the electrical system. Sometimes just missing panels to prevent us from sticking our hands inside there. We should be installing those. Simple things like insulation installed incorrectly. Here we have a possible fire hazard with paper towards the interior. Dishwasher, the water connections not set up yet when we do the inspection. Even very often common missed connections for our stairs to our framework on the deck, the hangers and the supports. Climbable handrail guards, really common. Missing handrail balusters. Here's one where the stop vent doesn't go through the attic. There was a leak, climbed up on the roof. There's a piece of plastic stuck over to stop the water from getting in. Missing flashings. Drains for the water heater shown right here. Pull down stair, really important issue. We try to get in the attic, they got some HVAC up there and the access to the attic's not big enough to take it out. Down in years to come, if something does give out or need removal of that unit, it's not coming out of there unless we have a hatch that's big enough and perhaps a pull down stair that is there, and that's what we would comment on there as well. Even on new construction, be aware there could be some mold buildup, and the four-letter word MOLD is kind of a challenge for a lot of folks. Wood lies on the outside of the building waiting for construction to begin. It gets wet in the rain. The actual area in the crawl space is dirt. It's not a finished space yet. And so all that moisture is on those joists. And now we're in a dark, warm space, and that's a perfect opportunity for mold growth. Here's another little opportunity to see. We're trying out the hot, the cold water. We're running it for a good length of time. And here we see that the water is actually not draining through the shower. No idea why it's not working. It's obviously draining somewhat because we're dry here, but it's not continuing to drain. So there may be a clog going on in this area. We also do thermal imaging for both new construction and resale. Melanie will talk to you about that in just a moment. But during new construction repairs, the whole water supply is not run and tested by the county guys for any length of time, whereas we are going to run it for a good lengthy time so we can see if there are any leaks. And certainly having thermal imaging will show us where the issues are. Even with new construction, we're seeing more and more requests for radon testing. When I joined the company, we had, I think, 3 or 4 radon testing machines. We might be around 40 or 40 plus right now because more and more folks know about it, but better to get it before closing than after. Radon's the second largest cause of lung cancer after smoking. And according to the ERA, we're in a high radon area here in Atlanta. So that shows a little bit about what the thermal imaging could pick up. In this case, we had hot water due to a crossed over plumbing supply line. The hot water was going into the toilet instead of the cold water. Commonly known in the business as sitting on a hot seat. And this is what our radon testing devices look like. 48-hour test, results same day thereafter, and any recommendations that need to be done. So I will turn it over now back to Mel, and hope you at least got some idea of what are the things that we're looking at to help out your buyers and to understand what they're actually looking at.
All right, I wanted to talk a minute about, let's see. All right, I wanted to talk for just a moment about, now that you have some really good information on why a buyer might choose to have a private home inspection, even with new construction, and to help them understand those 3 beliefs they have may not be serving them. I wanted to tell you that there are a couple of hoops that we have to jump through. So the first thing is people think that new construction is perfect and so it doesn't have radon issues. As Rael pointed out to you, radon can be in any home. There's no way to tell based on the age. There's no way to tell based on the type of foundation. And I just pulled our radon statistics, and a little over 10% of the radon tests that we do come back at actionable level from the EPA, and a big chunk also come back at retesting. So it's helpful information. It's a safety issue for clients, and there's no better time to know than before they move into a house than later. And it's a good time for them to be able to make this decision themselves. Again, I don't want anyone to get a radon test that doesn't want one. And so my only hope is that we educate our buyers. The same is true with thermal imaging. In fact, sometimes buyers will say, I don't need thermal imaging because it's a new house. There's not been a chance for a leak. But what we know about a new house is there hasn't been a chance for any leak that might be there to hit a finished surface, because we don't have the benefit of time on a new construction home. And so we are finding anomalies in new construction in particular, and they are things that may not show up for a while, and it's always less expensive to repair when you catch something early, just like with healthcare prevention early prevention helps make it an easier adjustment. Once your buyer is sure that they want a home inspection, it's not that easy. There are a couple of hoops that we jump through at HomeProbe that we see that we need to do for buyers. And so the first one is scheduling is difficult for new construction because the builder has a calendar in their head that may not match what the subcontractor's calendar is, and the listing agent is often completely oblivious to how ready the house is. And so I want you to know we're flexible with your clients, and we continue to chase those. We continue to chase the action to call the listing agent and say, is this ready? And then we'll let you know if it's not ready, and we can move it back and move it back. And so we're willing to be flexible for your clients on those new constructions. The second thing that we do is some builders require us to report in code. And if that is the case for your builder, we will be able to do that. So we will inspect to our normal inspection standards. There is no code that says your fireplace has to light, like that the switch has to turn on. There's no code, but it might be inoperable. And so we're still going to inspect to our building standards. We're not inspecting to code, but if the builder requires us to report in code for the things that are code infractions, we will be able to convert those findings for you. And then the third thing is that the builders often require us to have credentials. They want our insurance. They want our insurance written in their names often. They want our car insurance. They want our business license. They want our ASHI certification, our ICC certification. All of that stuff we have for them, and we're well versed in being able to send credentials, and we're well versed in which builder needs which things. So the lesson learned there is book with an inspector that will meet those builder credentials, because I'll tell you, they do read them and they will push back if they don't think that you're meeting one. And the builder doesn't care if the buyer gets an inspection. So the person who cares about whether the buyer gets an inspection is the buyer. And so give them the information, hook them up with the best inspector in town, which I think is us. And we will take care of them and make sure that that house lasts beyond that builder's warranty, and warrant off as many surprises as we can for the future for them. So with that, are there any questions? You can put them in the Q&A or in the chat. We will also send out this recording. So if you have questions after you watch it again, I know some of it Rael had to go through pretty quickly at the end. We're always available. Put a quarter in us and talk about inspection. Who knows when we'll stop, right? Well, I appreciate, and I'm sure your buyers appreciate you spending the time with us today. Let me tell you what is coming up. Next week, we have a new construction versus resale CE class in Atlanta. The next week we have a pre-drywall webinar on the 18th. So if you want to know about what that pre-drywall looks like, you can look at then. And then we're going to have a building permit CE the last week of the month. And if you want to see a new construction inspection, our Start Smart on August 26th, we're going to be inspecting our marketing person from South Carolina, Wendy's house, which is a new construction. And so you can see how we look at a new construction house during an inspection. We have a couple of questions from the Q&A. Terry would like us to send a sample new construction inspection. Yeah, why don't we do that? Why don't we do that with the confirmation when we send out the recording? We'll send a sample of a new construction inspection. Louise wants to know, at what point should the first inspection be done? Rael, you want to answer that?
Yeah, I think I'm unmuted. So yeah, pretty much when everything is installed, before the drywall gets installed, is a good idea. Because at that point, if everything is operational and we can still see all the structure, that would be a good time to do so. Pre-drywall inspection, and then certainly, after move-in, after final inspection is done, that would be a good time too.
All right, one more issue. Pinka says that the issue they have with radon inspections is the seller deliberately leaves doors and windows open. So sometimes that happens. We send notification that there need to be closed building conditions to the listing agent. And my hope is that we instruct them to pass it on to their seller. If sellers want to hide things in any land, they can. And that's a tricky situation. But I will tell you, if our radon tech comes to pick up the radon monitor and we notice that closed building conditions are not being kept right then, we will send a new test and we will notify the buyer. And that happened just this week. So it does sometimes happen. I like to give people the benefit of doing the right thing and being honest where they can. And if you have any reasons to believe that there may be tampering or something like that, we can have a conversation with the listing agent. All right, everyone, look for the recording and a sample of a new construction inspection report, and we will check in with you either next week if you're in the CE or the week after on the 18th for the pre-drywall webinar. Go do some awesome real estate. We'll see you soon.